Jamie, have you ever heard that joke about, why at university faculty meetings the debates are so heated?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, so the punchline is because there's so little at stake. And there's another joke or, a quip that is, that we have heard because we are consultants. We've heard, I'm sure, many times, which is those who can do, those who can't teach, and those who can't teach consult, right? And so, if humor is speaking to the truth there, the idea is that there is, a world, it's about a value judgment between saying, the world where there is talking is not necessarily as valuable of the world of actually doing, even if you don't have fancy words to wrap around the doing. And I think that set of questions is something that we're going to get at today.
Yeah, so while we're talking into a podcast, we're probably dismantling our own show, but
love it. Yeah,
yeah, why not, right?
When you see the Buddha in the road, kill him. I think
yeah. So
good mantra as well.
So the fundamental aspect here is that where is the answer, right? Where do we find the answer? And so that brings us to episode 6 of Happy Heuristics, shock-resistant leader routines and rules of thumb for a complex world. So the whole point of this podcast is to explore heuristics that'll help us operate in a fast, complex world. Do so with more consistency, more speed, more comfort and confidence as we offer heuristics or rules of thumb that help leaders operate in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so it brings us to our theme this episode of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. So so as we dig into this, I think the heuristics that we both chosen kind of come from our own perspectives and come from different angles, but let's check it out and see if they might be saying the same thing in different words, or maybe they're saying something a little bit different. But we'll explore that. So the heuristic I want to bring to the table, Jamie, is if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. And here's where I saw this. In South Carolina, there's I can't remember what it's called, but there's a Vietnam. In the harbor, you got these ships. I'm really doing a good job of describing this. You got these retired Navy ships. What the hell is it called when you have an aircraft carrier? I guess it's an aircraft carrier, right?
Yep.
It's amazing. And then next to the aircraft carrier on shore, they've got this replica of what would have been like a U.S. Army outpost in Vietnam.
Okay.
And so they took all these artifacts from Vietnam and created this thing where you can go through, and they've got sound effects, and I found it moving and interesting and useful. But one of these artifacts was on a mess hall. They had sort of like a set of heuristics for, they didn't call them that, but a set of heuristics or rules of thumb that soldiers would read going in and out of the mess hall. And one of them was, if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. And I think the premise of that is that the test of success is what happens in empirical reality, and that I could imagine that if you were part of a bureaucratic institution like the military, U.S. military or any military, that there are going to be things that you're going to be told that should work in theory, and things that you're going to be told are stupid, and that it's more important for what actually works, even if it's quote unquote stupid, is the thing that you should go with. Another example of that is something that Nassim Taleb wrote about in Anti-Fragile, which was like the green lumber problem. And the green lumber problem was that there was this commodity trader who was seen as someone who was not that bright because he traded all this lumber, and it became known at some point that he actually thought green lumber that he was involved in trading meant lumber that had been painted green as opposed to lumber that just hadn't dried, right?
Right.
What a moron, right? Apparently. But he actually made a ton of money. And a guy who wrote a book called, How I Lost $1 Million said, I looked at that guy like he was a dummy. I had all these, I was doing all this real complex modeling and went broke in the process. But boy, I mean, my stuff looked really impressive. So this guy didn't know that green lumber meant what it actually means, but apparently he did have some expertise. Apparently he did have some practical know-how that did make him successful. And even if that wasn't accessible, if you look stupid, but you're making it work, you're not stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, it's easy to outsmart ourselves, right? And our ability to, this is why I love startups that have teams, is I don't think there's any problem that's somebody has all the knowledge they need.
Yep.
Right? So you put a team together, you're more likely to have more knowledge. And so the point is, we can't understand everything. It's just not part of the human condition, is to understand why everything works. It's too complex. And so stop trying to, right?
Yeah.
Stop trying to call that thing stupid. It just works, right?
Yeah.
And there's websites that you look at and go, that shouldn't work, but it does. And people like it, and therefore it's successful. And so we all have these examples. One comes to mind, which is also a stupid example, but I enjoy a good whiskey cocktail, and I saw one recipe for something that included putting black pepper on top. And I'm like, well, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
And boy, it doesn't work. It works really well for that particular cocktail. And so there's all sorts of things where you look at something and go, that's stupid, but that's the intellectual response, not the practical response, which is, does it actually work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in terms, though, of applications and limitations, one thing that I've been hearing a lot more recently, and I'm fond of saying in agile environments, an agile principle is it's better for something to exist in it's better for something to exist in a flawed physical state than a perfect theoretical state.
Yes. Because
only the former, the flawed physical state, permits learning, right? I mean, and so, I think in a lot of organizations right now where, like agile terminology is like, becoming more popular, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what minimum viable product means, and it's sort of been divorced from Eric what's his face wrote in Lean Startup. But the idea isn't minimum viable product means like what's the sloppiest thing you can get away with. It's about what is the thing that we can do that creates some value with the least amount of effort that gives us some validated learning. And that was the language he used, validated learning. And the idea being you can think you're doing something really smart, spending 6 months coming up with a plan, and it's better to get out there with the thing that gives you the opportunity for some validated learning.
Yeah, and I think that's the fundamental idea. And I remember when I was in college, I was doing an internship for a research center. And it all had to do with macrobiofouling control, and it was all sorts of fancy stuff. But we had the math, right? We had the models, we had the math. We knew what the math was, we knew what the theory was. But then we don't really know how it's going to work, and so I ended up. We had a 1/32 scale model of the East River in New York, and we're modeling heat exchangers and how certain chemicals would use boundary layer theory and how it would actually deploy in this complex thing. And so you can do all the modeling you want. Models are based on what we know. Mm-hmm. They're not based on what we don't know.
Yeah.
Theories are based on what we think we know, not based on what we don't know, or what we think we know that we're wrong about. And that's where those tests come in really handy. I spent a lot of time doing experiments to kind of show, well, here's where the math works and here's where the math doesn't.
Okay. So before we talk about limitations on this, I mean, have we just sort of worked our way into your heuristic?
We kind of have. We kind of have. It's I wasn't sure if it was going to be identical, but it almost is. So should we explore that one?
Yeah, let's go there, and then we can hit the limitations of it.
Okay. So my heuristic, and I kind of say it more often, not as a heuristic, more as a practice. But the heuristic is reality is the arbiter of what works. Mm-hmm. And test to learn is the behavior. Right?
Okay.
So,
all right.
So test to learn, which is a lot of what you were talking about, was let's go test something, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the behavior, that's the action, that's the outcome that I want people to adopt. But the fundamental and why I like arbiter of the of what works is that we sit in a conference room and we debate and we argue and we talk about it, and okay, now we're treading the same ground and we're saying the same reasons why we think something will or won't work.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know until we go out and figure out what test we can do, and see what reality tells us. And so what I'm really looking for in that rule is not put the idea out there, not develop the full solution and put it out, and then okay, if as long as nobody comes to us and tells us there's a problem, we're okay. It's actually deliberately testing for the sake of learning, mm-hmm. right? And especially sometimes it's test both ideas, right? Oh, your idea, you like your idea, I like my idea. Yeah. Let's test both.
Yeah.
Right? Now that requires some temporary measures and doing some things that from a straight line business sense might not make sense. So I'll use an example from an entrepreneur. So I like to love investing in startups, and I've done that for a long time. I also mentor entrepreneurs at the university level, and I was judging a competition, and I remember someone showing me what they did, right, their product, and I won't go into the specific example, but their product and how successful he is at selling it. Mm-hmm. And he was a really likable guy, and you're like, is it your product or is it you? Mm-hmm. Like, how do we know that your product is really good, or are you really good?
Yeah.
It's like, here's how you want to find out. Even though you don't need to hire somebody to scale yet, hire somebody for a weekend.
Right.
And you sit in the back of the booth and watch them sell.
Right.
And maybe they can't sell as good as you can, but if they can sell, now you know if the product is saleable. Mm-hmm. And if they can't, maybe it is you.
Yeah.
Right. But right now you're sitting there, you don't know. Right. And I'm like, I don't know if your idea is good. It sounds like it might not be, but I can tell that you're a pretty good salesperson. How do I separate those two facts? Well, reality is going to be, I need to put that into reality. We can argue why his product is great or why he's not that great a salesman all we want. What test to learn can we do? How do we get reality to tell us what the truth really is? And so that's what the person did, and turns out both were a little true, right?
Yeah, right.
But his product actually had some validity behind it.
Right, right. That's a great story. So, should we talk about limitations?
Yeah. So there's a first one that comes to mind for me. This related to mine, and it actually both reinforces the principle, but also suggests its limitations. And I know we've brought up Karl von Clausewitz before in the podcast, but he's the father or the godfather of strategy. He was a general and a war strategist, but he was really the one who said that your battle plan rarely survives first contact with the enemy. That is both support of the idea that your battle plan is just a theory, mm-hmm. and you need to put it up against the enemy. The other thing is you can't take that back. Right. And that's sort of the limitations. It's not. It's being prepared to learn, but you can't test to learn.
Yeah.
Because it's not. You can't see how. I mean, we try to. Right. We We have simulated war games. We have simulated battles. You pretend to be the enemy, but they're pretending to be the enemy, right? You don't really know how they're going to react. And so the full experiment can't be done without doing the thing. Mm-hmm. And so there are limitations to test to learn where we really can't put it up against reality to be the arbiter of the truth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm going to come at it from a little different angle on a limitation, particularly going back to that framing of if it stupid but it works, it's not stupid. Because I think part of what we have to remember is it's what's the time horizon by judging whether something works, right? We've talked about resulting, which and Annie Duke, and that idea that you can play poker perfectly and still lose a hand, and you can play badly and still luck out and win. And so part of it is how many hands do you have to play before you know if something actually quote unquote works or not, even if it seems stupid, right? So an example for me, I mean, go off on a bit of a rabbit hole potentially, but 15 Bitcoin's been around for 15 years. Like 15 years ago, I looked at that, didn't bother to read the white paper, but 15 years ago I looked at that, heard it just superficial. I'm like, that's stupid. That's really stupid, right? And and then I waited until it was $25,000, or more to, before I, actually read it and figured out. But also so that thing that's stupid, I think, to me, Bitcoin has been around long enough where this thing that seems stupid, not just to me, but a lot of people, superficially, I think there's a solid argument to say, it might seem stupid, but it works, so it's not stupid, right? On the other hand, I'm going to look like a Luddite boomer here, but non-fungible tokens, I don't understand this at all. I don't understand it at all. And one could say, well, it's working. I mean, people are spending money on it, a ton of money on it. And I'm still going to say, yeah, or it could be resulting, or it could just be, randomness, or it could just be something else where really, if there's no use case for it, that this thing is actually going to burn itself out. So I'm saying that one could lump it into the category, maybe there's things about gaming or applications that I don't know. Maybe this will maybe what I'm saying now won't age well, but I'm not willing to say yet that NFTs fit into the category of if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid, because I don't think there's been enough time to test that.
Yeah, there certainly hasn't been, And while we don't want to turn this into being about NFTs, I'll take the other approach.
Okay.
Right, which is, I think there will be a future for NFTs. I think it'll make Bitcoin look like a toy, but the use case and the conditions are not yet developed.
Okay.
Right, and so there are people that are sort of explaining things that around how they can become digital contracts, and so let's say you're an artist, and it's not, a lot of it is around art right now, so that's why the use case, and that's a fairly limited use case.
Right.
I mean, art is a big market. It's not all the markets, but if I sell a painting for X amount of dollars, well, it might not make a lot of money until the third sale, but if I have a digital contract connected to that painting, then can I get a portion of the third sale?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And so I think there's ways to protect intellectual property. There's ways to track things over time. How do we end counterfeit products and all high-end value items? I think there's a lot of use cases that are just not developed yet. But this takes but again, without going to making this podcast about NFTs, that's not the heuristic nor the podcast, but turning to the rules under which this works, these rules work and don't work, I think you have to have clear learning objectives.
Yeah.
Right? And so, if I look at NFTs and go, should I invest or not? Well, I think that's not a very good learning objective.
Right.
So it might be, that might be the learning objective that I'm after, but I'm not sure it's a great one.
Yeah.
If my learning objective is why does it work and how could it be used, that's a different learning objective in this particular case.
Yeah, absolutely. So is any NFT worth what someone else has paid for it? I'm still going to say no on that. Is something very interesting going to come out of NFTs? Yeah, I'd say for sure. But that's the difference in the Yeah, but you're right.
And it's how you look at the experiment,
testing and learning,
right?
Yeah,
it's how you look at
yeah.
the experiment. And so test to learn requires just like, not just throw stuff out there and see what happens. It's like, what's the learning objective, right? What am I trying to learn from this particular experiment? And I'm not trying to test all of reality, right? But what basis of reality am I trying to test? And so that's where you get back to a clear learning objective.
Yeah, and that we're between this Bitcoin maximalist and you young folks and your NFTs. I think that's something we can agree on. That there is definitely going to be learning. That there's enough momentum there that. People who are investing may not be the people who learn, but there's definitely going to be learning to be extracted from what is happening in that space.
Right. And now this is a big, world-changing kind of objective, but these heuristics of, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid, and reality is the arbiter of the truth. They apply to mundane things too, right? And so. An example comes to mind just because I've talked about this more recently as especially people live in a Zoom world and every meeting's an hour, and that was already pretty true before the pandemic. It's more true now. But, I love like 18-minute meetings and, 27-minute meetings and things like that. And you're like, well, just setting a different number makes the meeting more focused and more productive. Well, that shouldn't be true.
Right.
But it is.
That's awesome.
Right?
That's
We've all
a great
experienced
example.
that. We've seen that happen. We can explain theories.
Yeah.
But the theories are kind of weak.
Yeah.
Right, around why that's true, and but in the end, it works.
Who cares? Right.
Who cares?
Yeah. Our ability to narcissistically come up with the explanation, which humans are wired to do, is
I love doing that.
Yeah. Oh, same. And it's sort of irrelevant.
Exactly. It is irrelevant. And that's the thing is that, putting odd times around meetings is effective at making meetings more focused and structured. Who cares why? Right?
Yeah.
The evidence, the reality, the truth suggests that it's not stupid because it works.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right.
Well, I think we
made our
beat
peace
that one
with
up.
this.
Yeah.
Love
yeah.
it. Good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope that there's been some food for thought here, and we hope that you will rate us and review us and let others know about what we're up to at Happy Heuristics podcast.
Yeah, and you can find us on most of your favorite podcast platforms. You can find our websites at jflinch.com, Happy Heuristics, or mgstrat.com, Happy Heuristics. And so please reach out to us on those platforms as well. And we always like to end with a simple bonus heuristic. So what do you have for us today, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, it's an oldie but a goodie. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't major in the minors.
Yeah, it's a pretty good book too, but good one to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.